Hello and welcome to this Legendarium Dream Team episode on The Wandering Fire, the second book in the Fionavar Tapestry by Guy Gavriel Kay. I'm Toramir, the Steward of Pundor, and joining me today are Eradandis and Hurinfan.
Hola.
Hello.
Today's discussion will be pretty much all spoilery since this is a book 2, but I'm going to start with, did this book, without spoilers, did it make you want to keep reading?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it hit its marks. It was a little bit more up and down than the first book, though.
Yeah, I want to see what happens. I don't remember what I said in our last episode. I can't say I'm particularly invested in most of the characters, but what's happening is interesting. I'm very interested in like how the myths and fables into this world. I'm very interested in the lore. I'm very interested in what happens with Macroth, and yeah, I'm basically interested in the plot, and which is not usually a good thing in my book, but plot, and I love the way it's written, just like everything else Kay has written. So it's more than enough for me.
And I think that might be a good thing to pick up on at the start, this dichotomy between sort of wanting to follow a character, being interested in what's he or she going to do next, and what's Kay going to do with this myth that I know, but what's he doing with it? And I think you're right in saying that. To me, it also feels like I'm more invested in what's happening with these plot points. What's he going to drop next? Not that invested in what is happening with Paul. What's Kim going to do? Where's Jennifer ending up? What's the deal? Well, okay, what's the deal with Damien? That's one of the things that are so closely tied to being a plot point and not just a character, that I'm more invested in that than I am in our characters from our Earth. How do you feel about that?
I agree with what you said, except one thing. If there is a character that I'm really interested in and invested in, it's Damien. Because, well, I'll talk about it later, but his is the journey that I really want to see emotionally.
Well, Damien almost exaggeratedly has one characteristic that no other person has, which is choice. But we'll get to that. No, look, the story's all wrapped in metaphors and myths, so it makes it hard to really get wrapped up into any particular character. To the extent that any character you felt anything for, at least I think that you were supposed to feel anything for in this book, is Kevin. And he tried, but everything's so heavily overlaid with myth and metaphor and legends and kind of making everything have more than one meaning, that it kind of makes it hard to attach yourself to any one character. So I generally agree with you guys, but just kind of want to dig into as to why I felt that lack of connection.
I think you hit it right on the head. And generally, I love stories that layer upon layer, especially when it's following the topology of old stories and bringing those stories on top of stories, and then having those archetypes represent those themes or those various meanings, especially in the characters. But I usually prefer when the characters are more than what they seem and than they are in this book.
Yeah. Look, and I will say that I, at least for me, again, I generally like the book and I would give it a favorable review. But the one myth that they really kind of weaved into the story is one of the ones that I just particularly detest. Like I personally detest it, so it made it hard. And that's the Arthur Lancelot Guinevere thing. Like I'm sorry, Lancelot's a punk, and you will never convince me otherwise. I mean, just like you just don't act that way to a friend. Done. So we'll get more into it though.
If I could give you a high five, I would. Yeah. I like Arthurian stories. I've read so many of them. I love it when it's done new. I love it when it's just the same thing over and over again. But yeah, I mean, you don't sleep with your friend's wife and then pretend like you're noble. Like, why do people act like this guy's like a great guy?
It's supposed to be this doomed tragedy romance. I'm like, it's not romantic. The guy is exactly what you think. He's not a good guy. And look, and I agree with you completely. Like a well done Arthurian tale is just like it's chef's kiss, right? Like just give it to me all day. But this one particular one is just, it doesn't matter whether Kay does it or anybody does it. Just Lancelot's not a good guy. That's end of story.
I was just going to say I need to quote Jennifer on this. I loved them both. So it's complicated. But yes, you don't do that to your friends. I agree with that.
She can love them both all she wants to. Like let's talk about agency, because that's the whole thing. To me, this is the pet peeve of mine in this book. Is that Lancelot has a choice. He can say no. He doesn't have to go through with it. Like, he knows good goddamn well, excuse my language, that his best friend is married to this woman, and he's making the choice to betray his friend. That's it. Like, there's no takebacks.
The gall to pretend like, oh, you doomed us by reviving me. Like, no, you could just choose not to do this. I mean, supposedly free will exists. Supposedly, we haven't really seen much of it, but
yeah, that kind of get to me. That's where this book falters for me a little bit. Is that, look, he does a great job of explaining how magic has a price, and we'll go through that and we'll talk about it. But I only ever really felt one person in this book actually made a choice to pay the price. Everybody else felt like, well, that's what's supposed to happen, and I've known this my whole life, and I'm just going to walk into it. So it doesn't really feel like there was much of a choice. They just pay it, people feel sad, and move on. So
who's that one person?
Kevin.
Okay.
And you could probably argue with me and say there wasn't any choice at the end, and I would have a tough time arguing against you on that. But go ahead.
I will add, I think, both choices by Damien and Jennifer at the beginning of the story to keep Damien.
Okay.
Because it seems like a lot of what happens in the next book is going to depend on Damien's choices. And Damien only exists because of Jennifer's choices as well.
Well, look, I mean, like, so this book, if we look at it as tension between predestination and choice, like, Damien is the expression of choice. Everybody else is living in a world of predestination. Like, nobody else really has a choice. They're just doing the same story over and over and over again, right? Damien's the only one who has that choice. So I'll take your point. So the proto choice, or the beginning of the choice, was actually Jennifer choosing to keep him.
Yeah, after that, she seems to fall into, I am doomed because I am Guinevere, just like the other Arthurian characters in the story.
Well, and it's like, for me, her arc to me was probably one of the most disappointing, because actually I liked her at the beginning and her having to deal with the trauma that she went through, and I thought Kay did a great job at this, like, what happened last book was evil and wrong, and she was having and the way he expressed it and dealt with it with her, I thought he did it well. And then, to your point, she turned really Guinevere, and then it's just kind of, whatever.
I'll add one thing. I agree. At the beginning of the story with Jennifer and her dealing with her choices and making certain choices and keeping the baby, et cetera, giving it away, was very well done. I mean, not very, but well done. And then, like we said, she fell into the Guinevere trap. But I also like that most of the book after that explored how she recovers from that and her eventual recovery and acceptance of love.
Yep.
Was done well.
I think one thing that's interesting to talk about there is Kay's use of archetypes and whether or not it locks him too much into the old stories that he's building on. And what we'll see in this book and the next, does he manage to play with them enough that we're interested? Or does he just tell the same story again?
Well, if we're going to talk about archetypes, so some of the archetypes he did that he played with that I actually liked. So if we're going to go full spoiler, I'm going to zoom in on Lauren Silvercloak, our mage, our resident Gandalf. And he certainly played with the trope of the wizard saving the day and being all knowledgeable and all like that. To me, his arc and his ending was awesome. I loved it. I really did. Where he's like, at the end, he doesn't have his powers. He doesn't have anything anymore, but he still has his friendship with Matt. And at the end, he's like, I still have my sword arm, and I was a man before I was a wizard. Can I still want to come help you? And I love the way that was expressed and his journey to that moment.
I'm a little more ambivalent. I think the ending with him and Matt was a little too tidy. Don't get me wrong. I like that Matt died, and usually I have no problem with resurrections. And I like that there were actual consequences for the death of Matt, especially because he loses his source and then Lauren is no longer a mage. But at the same time, that just frees up Matt to, take on the mantle of the king that he so wanted.
Yeah. Let me clarify. I like Lauren's journey. I don't necessarily like Matt's journey. But
Okay.
Lauren's journey was what I like, right? So let me put a fine point on that.
So it seems like all of the women characters are just getting paired with old men.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Kim is stuck with the mage character Lauren, and Guinevere, Jennifer is stuck with a decrepit old Arthur and a beautiful young Lancelot.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but didn't Kim have a thing for Aileron last book, or did I misread that?
I don't remember.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I thought she did. Anyways, but Jeremy and Shara, they're two young people of love. How's that?
Yeah, that was nice. I like the scene where she came to him and or he came to her in mid my Daladon.
Yes.
My Daladon's weird, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, if we're gonna keep on talking about archetypes, look, so it's funny because Aileron, there was so much time spent on him in the first book building him up, and he was almost a non-entity this book, except for the one moment where he had the fight, and then Arthur made that reference, "You're him," referencing Lancelot, and Aileron's response was, "But I'm not him," right? I might so that added a little bit of mystery to Aileron, but otherwise he kind of fell really, really flat this book, which was disappointing to me because I really liked him as a contrast to Diarmid. Like, they're both brothers, they're both highly competent, but their personalities are so different. One's really stiff and one's kind of more clever, right? So,
But we did see some of that at the beginning when the Sharons arrive in Brennan, and the play between Dermot and Elrond, where one knows more than the other and is just being revealed piecemeal. I thought we saw interesting things about the characters there, and how one of them is, I mean, what people say about them is true. One is this playful and, well, he doesn't care that much, but he does care. And the other is so tightly controlled and wants to know everything and control everything. And they're played up against one another. And, well, I just love that sort of defeat, but not defeat, where Dermot comes out on top, sort of, but still he yields to his brother pretty much in every way. But just I got you. But
This kind of plays into, I think, my biggest criticism. Maybe it's not a criticism because it's just a personal preference. I think this book was too short. There's
shame on you. No, shame on you.
I know you would
No.
hate that. Because like we're talking about this exactly. A lot of the first book was focused, especially on the two brothers, a lot more than in this book. And I think this one's quite a bit shorter than the first. Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of what happens in this book just feels like things that are happening, instead of things that are naturally happening because of the characters, characteristics or their choices. Um, this happens and then this happens and then this happens just because it's happening, right? And I generally prefer it when we sit with the characters, we understand the characters, and so when something happens to the story because of a character's choice, because something happens to the character, then it feels like a natural progression instead of just this has to happen because the weaver weaved it that way.
Yeah. So I have an obligation to push back on you saying that a book is too short.
You would hate that.
Having said that, I would have loved a book of just Aileron and Diarmid, just from their point of view. And Kay was trying to be a third person omniscient narrator, just kind of talking about everybody kind of all at once. And so I think there would have been it would have been a different story, maybe richer in some aspects, if it would have just been stuck firmly in, for example, just between the two brothers. Because to your point, it was a different. The first quarter of the book was a different story than the rest of the book, right? So
It seems like the third person omniscience not as popular a style anymore.
it's practically non-existent.
and still he does it so well. I mean, this is not him up to where he is now, but he switches so effortlessly between the different viewpoints, still at this early stage in his career.
Yeah, what he did this time, which I don't know, this is not it's a take it or leave it thing. He'll go through the story, he'll go through like until this critical moment, and then he'll switch the point of view to somebody else, and then he'll start a little bit behind where he just described, and then they lead up to that critical moment, and then he moves on. And he does that consistently throughout the book, where he'll get up to a point, then he'll change a point of view, then you go backwards in time a little bit, then you get back to the same point, then you push forward. And I just found that was like a consistent thing that he did throughout the book. Every time you got the point of view change, unless you're completely changing location, that he would do that again and again and again. And I don't know if you guys noticed that too, but it just became really noticeable about halfway through the book.
Yeah, it's not very much, but yeah, he does sort of backtrack a few thoughts or a little bit, and then he goes on. What this book does very differently than the last one is it's much more linear in the storytelling. It's almost completely chronological, apart from jumping ahead when they arrive in Fionavar to the Dalray out on the plains and then jumping back. But other than that, it's almost completely linear.
Yeah.
Did that make it different for you from the last book? I mean, it's different anyway because the storylines are more parallel this time. We're not dividing off so many people and sending them to different places apart from the sea journey.
I can't say it really affected my experience. And in fact, when you said that, I was thinking, was the first one not linear? And I had to remember that, yeah, because of the disparate storylines, we kind of went through here and then went back and forth. So no, I can't say it affected me at all.
The linear storyline was fine. It was good. I mean, it kept the plot through line fine. Like, so to me, what was different, like, let's take Paul as an example. Paul is much less Paul, the person from Earth, except in certain, like, very, and I'll talk about it later. There's a couple times where Kay kind of like shows you, hey, wait, still a human being underneath this other person, but Paul's pretty much the Lord of the Summer Tree almost throughout the entire book. So, and that's a different person than Paul, the person from Earth, right? And so, to me, that felt like a deliberate choice because when Kay breaks that, like, it's very noticeable when it gets broken. So, and that's what I found. To me, that was the biggest difference. Kim was the seer. She wasn't Kim. Jennifer became Guinevere. She wasn't anybody else but Guinevere. Dave became the war. Like, everybody was becoming they were more fully inhabiting their archetypes and becoming less the person that they were. That to me was the most noticeable thing about this book.
Except Kevin at the very end, until the very end.
Yes.
Kevin was his own man and just Kevin until he made his choice and saved the summer.
I'm just going to say I called it. I got to say that now. I called it.
You did.
It was a very beautiful scene. I quite enjoyed it, especially you saved the summer by having sex with the Earth goddess. Like that's awesome.
Well, so like,
on
it's
the sex
funny.
holiday.
Yeah, so I actually kept. I love the ending of it here. I have it here at the end. Was it here? Hold on. I just have to read this. Where he had no regret, much love, power, a certain hope, spent desire, and only one sorrow for which to grieve in the last half second as the former Earth came to meet him. Abba, he thought, and that just, to me, that's the power of Kay, because it's basically he's talking about he accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish, but in the last half second he was Kevin. He's like he missed his father who let him do whatever he wanted to throughout his whole life and supported him and trusted him and did all that. That was very clear throughout the first two books. It's just that moment at the last half second of my dad. That to me, that was very emotional.
Yeah, and having made that momentous choice and knowing that what he's doing is good, he's still. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. I think that's probably the main thing there. But
out of all the characters from Canada left that we have, what are they? Dave, Paul, Kim, Jennifer, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Those four, I think the one that I have the least grasp on is Dave. Even though probably my favorite left because she likes basketball. It's about all I got.
He likes basketball. He's alienated from his dad. He has a tough time expressing his emotions, and he got to have sex with a goddess and not die.
That's always better than the alternative.
Yeah,
Definitely. And he's also probably the one with the clearest journey. I mean, he was the outsider, the one that didn't fit in, and now he's found his role, and the others have fully accepted him, and he feels that he has purpose. So I really enjoy being in his head and seeing that the impurities are still there, but he's more mature about them.
Yeah.
And I actually had a moment where I thought, oh, he was talking about or thinking about Kevin with the girls, and I was thinking, oh, I'm in the Wheel of Time. All the guys are insecure about how the other guys act around women. It didn't last long, but I had it felt the same for a moment.
But it's just Dave with Kevin. That was always the thing. It's always like Kevin always made Dave feel uncomfortable. So like, and I thought it was Kay handled. I thought handled it definitely where like Kevin felt useless within himself. Like everybody else gets to do all this badass stuff, and I'm just Kevin, right? And everyone else is, dude, you're like the best, right? Everybody else is like, you're my best friend. You're the person I trust the most. You're my foil. Like, yeah, I thought Kay handled that very well.
I understood where Kevin was coming from, though.
Yeah.
We got Twice Born, Summer Tree, and you got the Seer. Jennifer, maybe not so much, but the other ones have a clear defined role in, secondary world. Fionavar. I wanted to praise something about this story. It's just, again, I think I said this in book one, but it's absent in most of Kay's other work. It's just the high fantasy aspects, even though a lot of it is taken from like real world mythology. The way that it fits in here is done very well, and I loved the climax of the book and everything leading up to the climax. Basically, after Kevin dies, I really liked all of that. If we're talking about plot and just spectacle.
Yeah, no, there's nothing to add to that. I completely agree. It's very well done, and like we talked a little bit before about the price of magic. That was very, very, very evident in this book. Is that like when the quote good guys use magic, there's a heavy price to pay for it, right? Always a heavy price to pay, and you can almost feel like, do they really want to go through with this? Because like something really, really atrocious is about to happen to the group if they were to accept the price of the magic. And that seems to be a running theme throughout the first two books, is that power has if you use power responsibly, it requires a heavy price. And that's something the bad guys don't have. They can use the same kind of power, they just don't have to pay the price for it. So to me, that's the metaphor of responsibility. If you're going to use power responsibly, there needs to be some sacrifice to go along with it. So.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you get the wild magic and the choice between not setting the wild magic free and setting it free and then facing the consequences when, well, in your eyes it goes wrong because you don't have any control over it.
Yeah.
And that's especially evident with the Wild Hunt.
Thank you for reminding me of this. I wanted to talk about this. Earlier I said I didn't really connect with the characters, blah, 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 except for Damien. I love Finn, and his section choosing to join the Wild Hunt is the only part in the book that actually made me very emotional. And I didn't cry, but it almost made me cry. And I thought it was beautiful, just the way Kay grows to be a writer and exploring the subjectivity of these kind of decisions. And it's what I think he comes closest to as his oldest stories in this story. And Finn's relationship with Damien and how that's going to affect Damien later on the run. And also the sacrifice that Finn makes in that moment was just beautiful and heart-wrenching.
And I want to riff off of that exact point, because to me, this is where we get to see Kay's brilliance as a writer come through. And it's right after that moment. Here, and I have it here so I can just read it. It's just one sentence. And it's about Paul. Paul was crying, whose dry eyes had sent him to the cemetery. I mean, it's one sentence and it packs so much emotion into it, right? And he's crying because of what Hurin just described. And I don't know. This is the book where it's like, oh, wait, this is Kay. This is actual Guy. This is Guy Gavriel Kay. And when you see like a sentence like that, you kind of go, oh crap, wow, this. It was that weird dichotomy moment where I'm reading it and then I had to stop and kind of go, wait. I almost felt like at that moment to put down this book and go pick up Tagana, right? It was that moment of, oh crap, this guy's going to turn into Guy Gavriel Kay. Anyways, it was
Yeah, really any story where a parent loses a child.
Yeah.
Lately, it seems to be happening mostly to boy children. But I've been reading a lot of those lately, and it's been right in the tear ducts and the waterworks.
And I feel like Finn is sort of in a way parallel to Kevin in that he goes willingly to something that he knows is the end of him as he is now. And the beautiful thing about Finn is you can sort of feel him transitioning from human to whatever else he becomes because he's turning less emotional, more logical, and then in the end, just I'm here. And
I'm gonna
he's
push back. I'm gonna push back a little bit toward it in that I really don't feel like Finn ever had a choice because we knew back from book one he was picked 3 times to die, right? So everyone knew he was going to die, right? So it's just a matter of him accepting the fact that he was going to die. So that's my pushback. That felt more like predestination to me than him actually choosing to do that.
yeah, he probably doesn't have a choice, but he's reflecting on what he's doing. He's regretting not being able to say goodbye properly to Damien
Right.
and his mom, and the emotions that he goes through there, and then the laying down of those emotions and just following the others towards the forest. It just feels like a classic K melancholy
Yes.
coming through, which is of course a lot more obvious in his later works, but this is one place where it's becoming evident.
I think this series would be very good on a reread for me personally because I know a lot of these mythologies. Like I have a vague overview of a lot of them, like the Cauldron, Arthurian stuff, a lot of the Norse stories that it's pulling from. But I don't know them to the extent that Kay obviously does. For example, getting marked by the boar. Like, what the hell is that from? But I think after I've become more learned in various mythologies that this is drawing from, I feel like it would enhance the experience at a reread. The Wild Hunt's also something I know very little about. Also, Lancelot being able to revive people. When did that ever happen?
I don't know. He's a good guy. He's practically a paladin. He's practically holy. He's the best man.
I mean, the logic that's given is he's so recently resurrected that he's so in tune with things that he can resurrect.
The
I
logic
don't
is
know.
that. Plus, he's done it before. It said.
Yeah, true.
I don't remember that in any story I read. Gawain's the best knight, by the way.
Dude, Galahad, come on.
Oh, that's good. Gawain's more interesting.
You said best, not interesting.
Interesting is the best.
Let's go with Tristan. Tristan's pretty good.
Okay.
I'm glad you guys know your Arthurian legends because I really do not.
Once Future King, pretty good.
The Once and Future King is an incredible book. Absolutely.
Put it on my list.
Have you seen The Green Knight?
Nope.
You gotta watch The Green Knight. It's like the best movie to come out in the last 20 years.
I'll put that on my list as well.
It's weird. It's really weird.
How about any story that glorifies Lancelot though? It's gonna suck though. That's all. That's all I have.
Yeah. Before I forget it, we were talking about high fantasy and the high fantasy aspects of this, and them not really being present in the rest of Kay's works. There's one exception. Um, it's his not YA novel, which is YA. It's just not marketed as YA. Isabel, which is the one that most clearly picks up the baton from this series, the Fionavar Tapestry. So whenever you choose to go there, you'll see him picking up this again. It's a good book, but it really should be marketed as YA because I felt a bit disappointed going into it, but it's still interesting.
It makes me intrigued to read it, actually. I'm interested in how Kay writes YA. Plus, I really wish you'd write more high fantasy.
Yeah, and I was about to say because I agree with Jordan. I'd be really interested to see how he writes YA because this is a mature book. This is, I mean, like you better be thinking maturely or being willing to think critically because otherwise, I mean, he doesn't hold your hand in terms of emotional in this book, right? You either are willing to deal with dark, difficult issues, or you're not. And if you're not, you shouldn't read it. And if you are, then there's a lot here to dig into.
So we've been skipping sort of all over the place now, but with focus, but still skipping. We've talked about
It'd be a green
structure,
tea episode otherwise.
but about structure as part of a trilogy. This book works fine, I think. It's building towards the climax. It's gathering up the threads. It's furthering the threads. But as a book on its own, how did you feel that this worked in terms of having an arc and having a climax?
It had a climax, um, but it's to your point. It's very very clearly a second book, and it showed. And it can't exist without the first book. It can't exist without the third book. It's very obviously a second book, and it's impossible to read it without having either end of it. In my opinion.
Yeah, what he said. It's got a clear beginning, middle, and end. But like other second books, it's a lot of setup for what's to come, and the climax isn't quite as climactic as maybe the first or the third book usually are in these types of stories.
And to Sharon's point, I mean, the big thing, the thing that you want to answer is what's Damien going to do? I mean, the entire like the B storyline is left as the cliffhanger, right? Like what's going to happen? Like you don't know, right?
Yeah. And Kay hasn't written a single trilogy after this. Do you think that's a thing that could stem from this, that he found out that, ooh, trilogies might not be my best thing?
That's surprising to me. I did not know that. Are they all duologies, or are there tetralogies as well?
There's a duology, and that's a Sarantium duology, and then it's all pretty much standalones with some continuation or connection, but
Mm.
no actual multi-arc books apart from the Sarantium duology.
Did the
So
Sarantine duology feel like a duology, or did it just feel like part one and two of a single story?
It's really, it could have been published as one book, really.
yeah. Okay, so you hit on what I think happened because I think he wrote this as a trilogy, right? And it feels like a trilogy. I think going forward, Cade just wrote a story, and then the publisher split it up into however many books that it got split up into. He just wrote stories afterwards, and he didn't worry about this is a first book, a second book, a third book. And this is him, this trilogy is him learning that lesson. That's my impression.
Yeah, or what he does afterward is just picking the part of the story that he wants to tell, and then that's one book. And then he picks another part of the story that he wants to tell, and that's one book. But he doesn't feel the need to connect them up. He drops a lot of little hints, and you recognize people, places. There's connections all over the place and in every book, but there are no arcs like there are here.
I agree.
So one more thing about structure that at one point struck me, and I don't know if you're going to agree, but I think you both have read the Live Ship trilogy by Robin Hobb.
Before you go on, I'm going to guess I disagree.
You
Yes, and
probably do.
I've read Live Ship. Live Ship. Love it.
So what I thought here was that the tiny interludes with the giants, the Paraiko or whatever they're called, if they had been longer, they would have reminded me very much of the serpent interludes in Live Ships. And I actually like the Live Ship serpent interludes, but these felt too static, that if they had gone on for longer, I wouldn't have wanted to read them. But with this brevity, it was okay. It drops little hints about what are we reading about, and then it goes back to the main storyline. But if he had expanded on that without having any actual action, I would have felt this is skippable.
Mhm.
This is a book of its time. The same story written in 2026, it would be 5 times as long. So you would have gotten all of that and more, right? It's just the nature of the beast. So I think part of the reason that that's so brief, to your point, is just in the time it was written. And I think the other part of it is, I think Kay's very deliberately trying to write a story that feels like a fable, that feels like a myth. And so that's how it comes across. Like, so I think some of the choppiness is deliberate.
I take back what I said. I think I would agree. And I think it's there just like it is in Live Ships because it's important for the next book.
Yeah, and it is pointing forward, and it is telling us things that we need to know, but we don't need to know what we need to know right now. And of course, what happens in Kim's searching, or whatever you want to call it, wouldn't have the same effect if we hadn't met the Paraiko earlier. We needed to know what they were. But you were talking about writing style. Any particular?
No, so I actually kind of touched on it already when we talked about, like, how he just kind of is very evocative in those short sentences. And so what I was trying to think about when I'm thinking about the writing style is I was trying to find a way to articulate it. So, for example, he will express an emotion, and the emotion will be expressed with either the word itself or through a reference like the one I described before, Paul who had never cried, who whether it was Paul who was crying, and his lack of crying is what sent him to the cemetery. So it's that he lets you fill in the emotion yourself. Like, how does sorrow feel to you? How does anger feel to you? And he lets you use your emotion to fill in the space instead of describing the emotion, describing how it feels, and kind of going through that, right? And I love that more, I'm going to call it simple style, where he's setting the foundation for the evocation, but letting your emotions do the work of filling in the gap. And that's a writing choice he's making that I actually appreciate and like.
Yeah, and is that the difference between flowery and evocative?
For me, yes. I don't know how you guys feel.
Well, I really love the style that he has, and I'm a sucker for the melancholy feeling that I get from reading his work, because
Mm-hmm.
it does affect me emotionally, even if it's not a momentous thing happening on the page. He still makes me feel the longing of the character, and I really like that because he's not pushing over the top to get you to feel stuff. He's just dragging you in little by little, or
Mm-hmm.
it could just be a word here, a word there, and you start feeling, oh, I feel this sadness because well, now I keep coming back to the lines of Alrasan, where there's this sense of loss, and it's present here in this book as well, where yeah, where I don't know how to describe it, where the inevitability. I think that's it in this book, and that's tied up probably with the archetypes that we mentioned, that the characters are sort of stuck in their archetypes, but the inevitability of where the story is going, and also the uncertainty of, will the love triangle this time be able to break out of the inevitability?
There's
Will
no triangle. There's no triangle. I'm sorry. There's no triangle. Where's the third
okay,
part? There's Arthur to Guinevere, Lancelot to Guinevere. Like, Arthur and Lancelot aren't doing anything.
no, there's the bromance.
I think you just have
There
a
is
problem
no
where
bromance. Lancelot betrays him. There's no bromance.
I think you just have a problem with the common acceptance of the term love triangle there. As far as the way you described Kay, the way that Kay writes emotions, I've never thought about it. But having heard you say that, I think you're right on the money. I can't say I prefer one type or the other. But yeah, Kay is generally very good at this. Yeah, I would contrast with Jenny Words, for example, who would describe the emotion in extreme detail. And it would make me just as emotional as the best of Kay. So I'm not going to say I prefer one or the other, but I think you're right on the money on how he handles it and how it works.
Yeah, I think the very best I've seen Kay do this is the end of River of Stars. I don't know if either of you have read that yet, but it's stuck with me for all the years since I read it. That feeling at the end of that book. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's it cuts deep.
Well, a good author makes you feel, right? Whether it's with a lot of words or with few words, but if they're making you feel something, then I think the good ones are doing their job.
Yeah, I've only read Tigana and Alrasan before this, so.
So we were talking a little bit about the price of magic, and we talked especially about the wild magic. And there's the tame magic, and one of the things that I sort of latched onto here was Lorne versus Metran fighting next to the cauldron. And I had this hilarious image that it was Harry and Voldemort fighting in the graveyard with this the wands connecting and
I
um,
was thinking the exact same thing. Like, man, I wonder if Rowling's read this because the way that like they
yeah.
entwine and it was
So
it
that
was
was my
very similar.
thought too. But then again, the price of magic did
There was a
become
cauldron
very
in
evident.
Harry Potter too.
There was actually, yeah.
Yeah.
But the sacrifice sort of that's apart from Kevin's sacrifice, but when Arthur chooses to bring back Lancelot, he could have not done it, but he's being noble and saying, I need to do this because that's what we need. We need Lancelot. We need this fighter, his prowess. And I'm
Does he
going to
really have
use
a choice? Does he really have a choice?
well, that's the thing. Could he have done it differently? The story sort of demands this.
Here's what I'll say. It's a choice only if in book 3 they don't continue the same doom loop. Otherwise, it was never a choice. He had to do it to fulfill the commandments of the circle of doom.
Also, how noble is Arthur? I mean, he killed all those babies, right?
Yeah, is he trying to be noble?
Well, noble how? Are we talking noble in terms of like the heroic ideal of noble? Or are we talking noble as in like he was a king who was ruthless in his exercise of power and who was a quote noble? I mean,
The former.
no, he's not noble. None of them are. Lancelot's not noble. Guinevere, none of them are noble.
But is he following a noble ideal or trying to?
Are we going back to the actual Arthurian legends?
I think in the context of this story.
In the context of this story, I mean,
I think
he has to fulfill his role of fighting evil, but never seeing it through to the end. That's his doom, right?
it's punishment.
So, how can it be noble if it's his punishment?
Yeah, and then could it be that him managing to be noble, do the right thing, see it through, could be what breaks the cycle? I don't know. I don't even remember the end of the third book, so I can say that without spoiling.
I mean, so this gets to the quibble I have with the book is that the only person really, I mean, and Sharon touched on it, that the only through line of any choice is everything surrounding Damien. Everything else is pretty much predestined or supposed to happen. Kevin had a choice until he turned into the beloved child. Then he had no choice except to die having sex with a goddess. I mean, when
A
you
good way to
become
go.
the archetype, yeah, good way to go. But when you become the archetype, you lose free will. That was repeated over and over and over and over again. And the only person who's left with free will for now is Damien. I guess until he chooses the archetype, is he going to be the Messiah or the Antichrist? Right. That's essentially his choice, right?
Yeah, and we still don't know what's going to be the sort of final showdown. Where is it going to take place? What form is it going to take? But we do have a sense that Damien's going to be integral to the solution or the ending there. What's going to happen? Who's going to win out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Damien is so the Unraveler's connection. The Unraveler is no longer separate from the Weave. He's a part of the Weave. He's forced to do it because Damien exists. Damien's existence forces him to be a part of the Weave. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops in book 3.
So, anything that you would like to discuss before we go into looking at the predictions from last time and any predictions for book 3?
I'm good.
So, last time at the end of the episode, I asked you for your predictions for the second book, and Hurinfan stated that they will harness their special powers. And I suppose that's what we've been seeing if we call going into your archetype being harnessing your special powers. And we did mention Paul being very much into his archetype, apart from a few places where he's sort of meta considering what am I now, and he's also a bit doubtful about can I access my powers when I need them? How am I this Lord of the Summer Tree? And still, he manages to do it at the right time.
Still waiting for Jennifer to do something more interesting than be Guinevere. Giving birth to the Antichrist, that's interesting. After that, it's just gonna, I am Guinevere, and I'm sad. I want more than that.
If she has sex with Lancelot, I'm going to be so disappointed in her.
And she did feel very static apart from giving into her love for Arthur. But she doesn't do much in this book.
Other than the birth and the choice at the beginning, which was, like I said earlier, very well done.
It was a good book, a good way of getting this started at speed, get us up and running again, and not having to sort of roll the ball up the hill. It just kicks it off. Now, Era, you said that there would be a child born who is the balance of good and evil. Check. Kevin has to die. Check. Kim would be giving truths to Aileron, and, well, check, I guess, check-ish. Dave will be warrior dude. Well, yeah, definitely he's been warrior dude, not as
Warrior
much
dude,
as we could have expected, but the arrival of the Brennan people when the Dalray were being overrun by the whatever they're called was really effective. And then Lauren and Matt have to die. And that didn't quite come out as it was. Well, half of them died and then came back, but the weird source died.
Yeah.
So I feel that you both lucked, or no, didn't luck out. You analyzed it very well and came with some good predictions. So do you think you're going to be equally lucky with your predictions for the third book?
I don't know who gets to choose first this time.
I think Era, you got to pick first last time, so maybe Hurinfan goes first.
Sharon goes first, so he'll get the easy win.
Matt will not die. He'll become king, and then he'll become a great king, and he'll live through the whole thing. Lauren and Kim will also continue a relationship, and it will not die. Paul. Dave's gonna die. I don't know what's gonna happen to Paul. Guinevere will do the stupid thing with Arthur and Lancelot. Paul. I don't know what's gonna happen with Paul. I got no idea. It'll be a big battle. It'll be epic. That's all I got.
Okay. Let me see. Damien, he'll choose to be a good guy. So he's going to choose good, not evil.
Definitely.
I'm going to go on a limb here and say because of what the Unraveler did, Guinevere is not going to choose Lancelot because she has the force of will now because of the awful things that happened to her to stay true to Arthur. That's going to be. I hope that happens because if not, I'll be very disappointed. Paul's going to have to face Galadan, the other demigod person. I think we learn more about Galadan at that point because he's kind of been the wild card. I think Paul wins but loses his powers. He becomes basically Earth Paul after that. Kim, I think, is going to end up with Aileron. Jarma dies, but he's going to leave his betrothed pregnant with whatever his child's going to be. Those are my predictions.
Well, I'm not going to predict anything because I might predict from actual knowledge deep inside my brain. Even if I don't remember the actual ending, I do remember things about, for instance, Damien that have stuck with me. So I'm just not going there. But I'm looking forward to reading the third book because now I've read each of the two preceding books twice in a short while, less than half a year. So I need to go on to the third one.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll see when the next episode happens. I can time this episode for the readers, at least or listeners. Time this episode for the listeners by saying that today my favorite team in the English football/soccer league system, Ipswich, were promoted to the Premier League. So I have no idea when this episode's coming out, but now you know when this happened.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Come on, you blues. Anyway, this has been an episode of the Green Team of the Legendarium. We would like to thank Horizon Brave for starting it all and Craig for loaning us a small part of his media empire. And this is us signing off. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye.